there's a simple technique that can completely change the way you see what you're drawing. In this video, I'm going to draw a full portrait completely upside down, and then I'll flip it and show you exactly how I add shading to bring it to life and make it realistic. And I'll actually recommend you try this with me. Skip it and your drawings will always likely be inaccurate. Let's get into it. One common mistake beginners make is trying to draw features as symbols, thinking this is an eye, this is a nose, instead of looking at the actual shapes. Remember, an eye is just a collection of shapes, curves, lines, and angles. Look at it as a set of geometric forms. Another classic beginner mistake is rushing. Don't move too fast. Keep your hand relaxed, take your time, and constantly compare lines and shapes to what you see in the reference photo. Notice the angles, the curves, and the distance between the features. The more you observe, the more accurate your drawing will become. It's okay to use light lines here. You'll refine them later. Pay attention to subtle curves, define the jaw or the forehead. Upside down, you can focus purely on shape and spacing. Notice how the eyelids curve, how the corners align, and how the eyes sit in relation to the nose. A tip here is to constantly measure visually. Compare the distance between the eyes to the width of the nose, or the height of the forehead to the chin. As we continue through this drawing, I'm drawing things like the nose, the mouth, and also the eyes, and checking the relationships carefully. Beginners often make the mistake of placing features too high or too low. A simple way to avoid this is to measure with your pencil. Hold it up, align it with a feature in the reference, and transfer that angle and length to your paper. This keeps everything proportional. This is a great point to pause and say, if you're drawing this so far and you want more drawing tips and exercise like this, make sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the Portrait Queue. I post new drawing tutorials regularly. You won't miss upcoming videos where I dive into even deeper into observation, technique, and improving your drawing skill. As I continue throughout this drawing, I'm drawing things like the jaw, the ears, and also the hair as well. When drawing the ears, beginners often misjudge the angle, making them too flat or too rotated. Instead, draw the ear as a combination of curves and shadows. Don't think of it as a literal ear, just the shapes it contains. Upside down, you'll notice shapes in the hair you might otherwise miss. Here's some extra tips as we go. Keep checking proportions using horizontal and vertical alignment. Step back occasionally to see the overall balance, even if it's upside down. If you make a mistake, that's absolutely fine. Erase and adjust. The upside down technique makes mistakes easier to spot because you're not distracted by the symbolic interpretation of features. One classic mistake that I've personally done in the past is just continuing on even though I know a mistake is within my drawing. It's much more important to erase mistakes earlier on in the process. So if you see a mistake, it's fine. Mistakes are part of learning. Don't get hung up on perfection. The goal is learning to observe accurately. So take a moment just to look over your drawing. Compare the features again. Are the eyes in the correct position? Does the nose line up with the rest of the face? Is the jaw proportionate? Remember, drawing upside down helps you see those relationships without your brain automatically correcting things in a biased way. If you want to see the next stage where I can add shading and bring this portrait to light, drop me a comment below. Let me know if you'd like a follow-up video shading this exact same portrait so you can practice the full process from outline to finished piece. I read every comment and love hearing what you want to see next. So this drawing took me around 15 minutes to create, so it's sped up within this video, so just keep that in mind. I try and use this method when drawing portraits. When drawing a portrait, I would flip it upside down and also the reference photo. This helps me spot mistakes in the process, and then I can flip it the right way up. It's definitely a technique that you should utilize within your portrait drawings. I use things like grids, drawing medium to line up horizontal and vertical alignment, and definitely use the upside down method. I do it time and time again within my time-lapse drawings, so I really recommend you trying this method out. But hopefully you can follow along within this drawing. You can see the marks that I'm making on the page, and you can pretty much study and also copy the marks that I'm making. So hopefully you're satisfied with your drawing that you have created. I think you'll be really surprised by the outcome after you flip it upside down. And I actually really recommend you trying this out 3 or 4 times after this video, picking a portrait that you like, picking a still life photograph, or even a landscape. You'll be really amazed just by how accurate your drawings will become. This is a famous technique that was first introduced by Betty Edwards and her book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. I really do recommend that book as well. I'm just going to take a moment here to talk about this drawing tool that I have here. If I unscrew the top of this drawing tool, you can see that the pencil is pretty damn small. This isn't sponsored in any way. This is my personal recommendation, but I absolutely love these pencil extenders. You can just clip it in, tighten it up, and away you go. If you have lots of pencils out there which are ridiculously small and you want to make use of all of the lead within them, this is a great tool to have. Now we've got the basic outlines in place, it's time to start pressing a little harder on the pencil and bringing more contrast into the drawing. Start gently darkening the lines that define the main features. But don't be afraid to erase areas that don't feel quite right. I'm already erasing part of the jaw where it's slightly off. It might feel frustrating and feel like you're going backwards, but it's completely normal. Adjusting as you go is how you make a sketch more accurate. One of my favourite tricks at this stage is to zoom in on the reference image. By concentrating on just a small area at a time, you can spot subtle mistakes you might have missed when looking at the whole face. For example, the corner of the eye might be slightly higher than how I initially drew it, or the curve of the cheek might need a little tiny tweak. Or the nose, for example. Focusing in this way makes the whole process feel more manageable and less overwhelming. Want to go even deeper? Join the Portrait Guru membership for exclusive shorts, behind the scenes content, and exclusive chat rooms to help improve your art with fellow gurus. It's a way to support the channel and your own artistic journey. Check out the link in the description about different membership options. At the start of the drawing, I'm building the foundations, sketching in the outlines roughly of the placements, and when I develop the drawing more and more, I will then zoom into each facial feature and then detail it from there. Instead of trying to fix everything at once, you tackle one small problem at a time. When refining, think about the pressure of your pencil. Pressing harder creates darker lines, which helps certain features pop and gives the drawing more depth. But balance is key. You don't want to overdo it and lose the subtle shapes underneath. You can always go back with an eraser to lighten areas that feel too heavy. If you start drawing too heavy lines, it can almost look comic book-like. So really vary that line pressure. Make some darker and some lighter. As you concentrate on each area, look for little connections between features. Notice how the jawline curves into the cheek, how the shadows sit alongside the nose, and how the upper lip relates to the lower lip. By zooming in and working in sections, it's easier to get these relationships correct, and you'll catch errors you might have missed before. Another tip at this stage is to also step back. Even though you're focused on the tiny details and zooming in, glancing at a whole drawing every few minutes helps you check the overall balance. Sometimes what looks perfect close up can feel slightly off when viewed as a whole. This back and forth between detail and the bigger picture is where the real drawing comes together. I also like to experiment a little bit with line weight here, pressing harder in certain areas to suggest depth or shadow and keeping other lines lighter. It's subtle, but these variations make the portrait feel more three-dimensional alive, even before adding any shading. Don't worry about mistakes. I'm just adjusting the jawline and a few contours as I go. That's part of the process. Spotting mistakes is not failure. It's learning and refining. Treat each correction as a step towards a stronger, more accurate portrait. By focusing on one small section at a time, making small adjustments, and varying the line weight, you start to see the portrait really come alive. It's almost like watching a rough sketch transform into something a lot more deliberate and confident. Every little tweak you make now pays off in dividends in the final result. So take your time, zoom in on the reference, refine each feature carefully, adjust lines that feel off, and use contrast and pressure to start bringing the portrait to light. So by the end of this section, your upside down drawing will feel much more structured, precise, and ready for the final reveal. You can see that I'm drawing with pencil within this video, but if you don't have any to hand, a pen will be absolutely fine. A pencil is great for erasing those mistakes, but a pen allows you to just commit to the stroke. So I actually recommend you trying out both a pencil and pen for this technique. Finally, let's take a look at this finished upside down outline. Even though we draw it this way, it looks surprisingly coherent and balanced. No details yet, and definitely no commitment. Just mapping out the overall shape, structure, and also the foundations. I'm basically asking myself, where is the light and where is the shadow? I'm also working from left to right. That just to avoid dragging my hand through the graphite and smudging everything I've already done. It's one of those small habits that saves you a lot of frustration later. At this stage, I'm simplifying everything into those big shapes. I'm not thinking this is an eye or this is a nose. I'm thinking in terms of abstract patches of tone and light. If you can train yourself to see like that, your drawings will become a lot more realistic and you'll improve fast. I'm constantly squinting my eyes, looking at the reference photo and also my drawing to see if the tones line up. Give it a try. If you're having problems, squinting your eyes blurs the subject and helps you see the tones more easily. You can also see I'm keeping the pressure pretty light. That's intentional. It gives me room to adjust and correct without fighting the paper. Now I'm just starting to connect those shadow shapes together. Instead of isolated bits, I'm grouping them into one larger shadow mass. This is huge. If your shadows feel connected, your drawing immediately looks more cohesive. I'm keeping the edges quite soft for now. Nothing is fully refined yet, so that comes later. As I build this up, I'm constantly thinking about contrast. A lot of drawings fall flat because everything sits in the same mid-tone. I'm already planning where my darkest darks are going to be, especially around the eye socket and under the nose. If you're finding this helpful so far and you want to improve your portraits and also your drawing skills, subscribe to the Portrait Guru. I break this sort of stuff down regularly and keep it practical so you can actually apply it in your drawings. And give it a like whilst you're there. Now I'm starting to push some of these darker values a bit more. Not all at once, I'm layering them gradually. I'd much rather go over an area 3 or 4 times than try to hit the final value straight away and overshoot it. This is also where I'm thinking about the terminator, that transition between light and shadow. It's one of the most important things for describing form. If you get that edge right first, the face turns in space and feels more three-dimensional. You'll notice I'm not blending everything smooth either. I'm letting some of the pencil marks show, but I'm controlling the direction of them. And that's another key point. I'm following the form with my shading. Around the cheek, the strokes curve slightly. Around the eye socket, they wrap around the structure. That subtle change reinforces the 3D effect without needing extra detail. At this point, I'm starting to refine the eye area a little bit more. I'm thinking in values first, details second. It's very easy to jump into eyelashes and tiny features too early, but that usually weakens the drawing overall. And here's a quick one. What do you find hardest when drawing or shading? Is it getting things smooth or is it figuring out where the shadows should go? Drop it down in the comment section below. I'm really interested to hear and it helps me know what to cover next. Now I'm building up the midtones. This is where the drawing starts to feel more complete. I'm bridging the gap between the light areas and the dark shadows so nothing feels disconnected. I'm still being careful not to rush. Every layer is quite controlled, quite deliberate. You can see I've also started to develop the hair, but again, I'm not drawing individual hair strands. I'm blocking in the overall shape and value first. I can push things a little bit further with a fresh pair of eyes. I'm deepening the shadows again, especially around the eye, and under the cheekbone. This is where the contrast really starts to bring the portrait to life. So now I'm tightening some of the edges. Not everything should be sharp. In fact, most edges should stay quite soft. But having a few sharper edges, especially around the focal points like the eyes, helps guide the viewer's attention. I'm constantly comparing values as well, asking myself, is this area darker than that one? Should this edge be softer? Should this shadow connect more? That constant comparison is what keeps everything balanced. At this stage, it's less about adding new things and more about refining, adjusting values, smoothing transitions where needed, and making sure the whole drawing feels unified. And that's the real key takeaway here. Start with the big shapes, build your values slowly, think in terms of light and shadow, and let the details come at the end. Now that everything's in place, this is where I slow down a bit mentally and start really observing. I'm not rushing anymore. I'm looking at the drawing as a whole and asking myself what feels slightly off. Usually it's subtle value shifts. Maybe a shadow needs to be darker or a transition needs softening. If something stands out too much or disappears completely, it's usually a value issue. I'm also checking edges carefully now. You'll also notice I put a piece of paper over the areas where I've already shaded. That's just to protect them whilst I work and also stops me from smudging and getting all that graphite on the side of my hand as I'm drawing. It also keeps the values clean, especially when you're going back in with darker tones. Edges do a lot of work in a portrait. Some areas, like around the cheek or jaw, I'm keeping quite soft so they blend into the form. Other areas, like the eyes and parts of the lips, I'm sharpening slightly to bring focus. If everything is sharp, nothing stands out. If everything is soft, it all feels blurry. That's the contrast between the two that makes it feel realistic. Now I'm going back into some of the midtones and just even them out a little bit. This is where patience really pays off. It's not about the big changes anymore. It's small adjustments that really add up. You'll notice I'm still using quite a light pressure, even at this stage. That keeps the surface of the paper intact and avoids that overly shiny, overworked look when you sometimes get with graphite. Another thing I'm doing here is slightly darkening the darkest areas again. As you build up midtones, your darks can start to feel less strong by comparison, so it's worth revisiting them at the end. That helps restore that full value range from your lightest lights to your darkest darks. I'm also being careful not to lose the highlights. Sometimes it's just about touching up certain areas and let the paper do the work. Those lighter areas around the cheekbone and nose are what gives this drawing a sense of light hitting the face. Drawing hair works best when you treat it as a mass, not a collection of lines. Now I'm turning the drawing upside down. This is something I do quite a lot because it forces me to stop seeing a face and start seeing shapes again. It makes mistakes stand out instantly, proportions, angles, values. Everything becomes cleaner and clearer. If something looks off, turn it upside down. It always works. If needed, you can lift out a bit of a graphite with your eraser, but I try to preserve those areas from the start rather than constantly correcting. Now I'm just refining the hair slightly more. Again, still thinking of shapes. I might suggest a few strands here and there, but I'm not trying to draw every single strand. Less is usually more. At this point, I'll often take a step back, even physically if I can, just to see the drawing from a distance. It's surprising how much clearer things look when you're not right up close. And also, it's really important you take breaks as well. You can immediately spot if something feels unbalanced or if one area is pulling too much attention. Final few adjustments here. Just tweaking values, softening a couple of edges, and making sure everything feels consistent across the whole portrait. And then that's pretty much it. Let me know how you got on in the comment section below. And if you liked this video, I recommend this video coming up.